Hey everyone, Tim here from SnapAttack. Let's dig into this week's Threat SnapShot. So it's not every week that we have a major supply chain compromise to talk about, so that's really why our highlight this week is going to be on the 3CX voice over IP software. This was a pretty large compromise, and I think the VX Underground's tweet here summarizes it. This is pretty large software. It's used by over 600,000 companies, 12 million users. This backdoored both the Windows desktop client as well as the Mac OS version, and it's being attributed to the North Korean threat actor Lazarus Group. So this is nation-state level activity. This is not as high impact as SolarWinds or some of the other more notable supply chain compromises, but it does show you what power nation-state actors can have and how they can use these sort of attacks. So some threat intelligence here, other sources to look at. I believe CrowdStrike was the first one to really post this out in the public forum. This was on Reddit, which was a very technical blog post that described the activity that they were seeing, some of their IOCs and hunt queries that you could use, as well as their recommendations. There is a companion blog post now that talks about this incident, and again, it is basically a repost from what originally appeared on their Reddit thread. Sentinel-1 has also been tracking this activity. In true wanting to name the campaign, they're calling it Smooth Operator, which is great because this is voice over IP software. So they have seen similar activity in their customers' environments. And for one more, we'll also talk about Huntress. Again, this software is used by a lot of small and medium businesses, which is also in Huntress's ideal demographic, and they've seen a lot of this activity in their customers. They have a really good detailed timeline, and the one thing I would like to point out here is that this 3CX desktop app, it's part of a couple of malicious backdoored versions that there are. Specifically, they talk about two DLLs. There's an FFmpeg, FFmpeg DLL and the D3 compiler DLL. These two combined are what's going to allow the command and control and reach out to a GitHub link to grab a second stage. So if you want to learn more about how this works, these blog posts, especially the Huntress one, go into some deep dive. They actually reverse engineer the DLLs and talk about this. The main thing is that once this update has been installed on your computer, it's going to take, as they've seen, 7 days before it's going to reach out to a C2. So similar to how SolarWinds lied dormant for a period of time, this malicious update was also the case. And again, there's a couple of backdoored versions here. So if you went to 3CX's website and downloaded those, you could be affected. If you happen to have automatic updates installed, it could also automatically update to one of these backdoored versions. So there is going to be a new release put out by the vendor. Obviously, that would be the best way. Right now, the mitigations in place, these C2 domains and this GitHub URL have been taken down, so it should be relatively benign at this point. But that said, being vigilant here, making sure you're hunting for activity and, patching to the latest version is going to be critical here. Also would be remiss if I didn't mention 3CX did have their own update. It's always interesting to see how the vendor responds to this. Unfortunately, they have not had a great response, so I'll leave some of that commentary up for others, but apologizing here is not necessarily the best solution. They were even, there's some little bit of drama there too with the other vendors like CrowdStrike and Sentinel-1 who had identified this activity and, them denying this initially and not taking this seriously. So again, hopefully this just tells vendors out there that we have to do better and take these sort of incidents more seriously. So let's actually pivot over to SnapAttack. What does this sort of thing look like? So we have a malicious version of the 3CX desktop app. We were able to install that and see it download and install the malicious DLLs here, that FFmpeg and D3 compiler. There is not a whole lot that's going to be interesting here. Again, pretty much this is going to look like a normal installation. I can kind of skip around. You're going to see, this going through and installing the software. We can see, on our timeline here that we are going to have detection hits for those malicious DLLs. And ultimately, for the first phase of this infection vector, looking at the IOCs is going to be your best bet. The actor did go hands-on keyboard for several different infected organizations. So those TTPs are going to vary. looking for suspicious child processes of the 3CX desktop app would be a good, behavioral indicator to look for some post-exploitation activity. But just to see if you are affected, probably the best way to do this is to look at some of the IOCs. I am going to highlight Sophos Labs, so they have been tracking this pretty closely, and their report is one of the more comprehensive ones I've seen, which has both the Windows and the Mac versions, all of the C2 malware domains, and they also include, again, the FFmpeg or D3 libraries, as well as the library on the Mac variant, not just the malicious installers here, which you can see. So I could go over to here, I could open this up in a raw tab, copy this out, and in SnapAttack we have our IOC hunter. So, I can paste this information in. We're going to pull out all of the different domains, IPs, hashes. I could go ahead and I can take these hashes here. I'm going to launch these in, our library here in SnapAttack and just see what we, have here. And again, we should have a couple of hits just based on running that attack in our lab space. So, really quickly here with IOC Hunter, we can see that we've got 9 events that have matched for those malicious, DLLs or malicious MSI installers. So this is a good way to see, if this sort of activity is in your network, if you've been affected, and you can take action further from there. We also do have detections in SnapAttack around the malicious DLLs and the malicious desktop apps, which you can use, which again is going to look at the hashes, the file versions, those process names here. So, these you can also use and deploy to your SIM or your EDR to detect that activity. And again, there's also other detections in the platform where you can have, suspicious follow-on activity, such as if that 3CX desktop app is spawning, suspicious or weird child processes, or, other detections that look for post-exploitation activity here. So that would be the way that we would recommend that our customers stay protected. So that's our threat snapshot for the week. This is a weekly series. Like, subscribe, comment below the video, and we'll see you next time.